Medical Bureau here in Lourdes. And we have Gerard Bennett from Ireland and a member of the Hospitality of Our Lady of Lourdes. And he is from the Pilgrim Group of the Oblates. And we have Helena Foy, part of the Hospitalities of the Diocese of Cloyne in County Cork in Ireland, and also a Hospitalier de Notre-Dame de Lourdes. Thank you so much for being with us today. So I'll begin with you, Doctor. For my first question, Lourdes is very famous for two processions that take place in the sanctuary every day. There is the famous Eucharistic procession, and there is the torchlight Marian procession. Now, I understand that at the Eucharistic procession, because of the power of the Eucharist, there is always a medical presence there at that procession. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yes. Well, the medical presence becomes institutional after the creation in Lourdes of the Lourdes International Medical Association. We are now in the 20s of the 20th century. The association had been created in 1925, and it becomes international in 1928. So once there was an organized and structured association of Christian doctors that loved Lourdes, the authorities of the time, the rector of the time, thought it was a good idea to have the doctors take part every day in the procession, having the big honor of processing immediately behind the Blessed Sacrament. And why that? Because at the Eucharistic blessing, which is the end part of a procession, there was always, or there had been many, cases of alleged cures. And so the rector of the time must have thought it would have been more practical to call a doctor, if present, to see and ascertain what was happening, rather than asking some of my brothers and friends of the Hospitalité Notre-Dame de Lourdes or some of the priests or clerks that were present. And then the second reason, which I thought was fantastic, and it's terrific intuition, so true today, was also to show the everyday pilgrim or the anonymous pilgrim that even those that were thought being scientists in a way were following Jesus Christ and kneeling and bowing in front of us as any other Christian that was present. And I think this is so true still today. My predecessors and myself had the privilege of following every day the procession of the Blessed Sacrament, and this presence, I think, is still today very relevant and very important.
And Doctor, for a doctor like you, who is of course working, with the sick and the patients, and many of the pilgrims who come here to Lourdes, they're searching for hope, they're searching for cures. When you're there with them, following the Blessed Sacrament and doing that every single day, and as I understand, you've been here now for quite some time, since 2009. What does that do to you as a doctor and as a person, to be in that constant contact with the Blessed Eucharist?
I'm not ashamed to say that more than once I've moved to tears, because having the privilege, like the bishop and the two assistants, to carry the ostensory among the sick people and the pilgrims that are present, I can see the faces. I have this privilege of seeing the eyes of these people looking towards the Blessed Sacrament. And I think that is moving, and it pushes me, and I'm sure also my colleagues that are here perhaps only for 2 or 3 days or a few hours, they push you to feel the big honor that we have of being regarded as healers, as medical professionals. I think this is very important. And it's for a number of years now they've been sharing this honor and this privilege, not only with my fellow medical doctors, but also with nurses and other medical professionals that so numerous are part of the Lourdes International Medical Association. Very moving.
And Doctor, if I may do one last follow-up question on le Bureau des Constatations Médicales, what role does this play in Lourdes? Because it seems to be such a unique entity, such a unique presence in a Marian shrine.
As far as I know, this is unique in all religions. In all religions, also I'm thinking now, talking here today in the United States of America, the Native Americans, they have a very fine traditions regarding the faith and trust that the Native Americans had towards the spirits that would be held. So in all religions, in all anthropologies, in all parts of the world, there is a direct and strict relation between the religious belief and health and the hope for. So this is not at all unusual. What is unusual is that when the first cures or alleged cures happened in Lourdes, a few in the days of the apparitions and so many in the years following, the French, there's no time today, but it might be interesting for I suggest to go and look it up on the internet. But the French laïcité, the French Cartesianism, the French rigor, the first medical schools that were organized with a more scientific rather than charitable approach. The French started approaching these alleged cures with a scientific medical eye. In the time of the apparitions, the bishop of the apparitions, Monsignor Laurence, asks a physician to investigate and see if those alleged cures were true. He will end up saying that there are 7 which he considered miraculous on the decree of recognition of the apparitions. And in the following years, it's the same. At the point that then a structural bureau was created in 1883, we are now about 20 years after the recognition of the apparitions of 1862. So apparitions 58, recognition 62, and the Bureau de Constatation Médicale 83. It was Dr. Gino de Saint-Maclou that created. And since him, there's always been a residing physician in Lourdes. I am the 15th, nominated by the bishop because it is the bishop, the custodian of the grotto, and the doctor, and his colleagues, of course, is his expert in the field of medical cures. This distinction, if you wish, between the liturgy and the religious action in medicine, I think makes of our bureau something absolutely unique, all religions considered.
No, it's such a treasure for us here in Lourdes to have that bureau. And so Lourdes welcomes everyone from the 4 corners of the world. Helena and Gerard, you're both from Ireland, and I understand that you've gone to great lengths to come to Lourdes, to make Lourdes a central part of your spiritual life, to participate with the Hospitalité de Lourdes. Helena, if I could begin with you, can you speak about what coming to on pilgrimage to Lourdes means to you?
Well, I suppose I came to Lourdes first time, like many others. I came with an aunt of mine who was a member of the Hospitality, and religion, or the Blessed Virgin in Ireland in particular, it would have the rosary and all of that would have played a huge part in people's lives. So it would always have been said in the home, at home. So my aunt was a member of the Hospitality, and I came not really expecting too much, not knowing, what to expect when I came. So I arrived for the first time. I was in university, so it was late teens, and I came on pilgrimage. And I suppose, like lots of others, I don't really know what happened. Something happened to me while I was here, and I came in contact with other people from the Hospitality of Our Lady of Lourdes, so much so that when the pilgrimage went home, I stayed on, and I have been coming back ever since. So I stayed on for several weeks afterwards. So it's very difficult, really, I suppose, to explain something. People say you're called, it's an invitation, and I suppose that's exactly what it is. But when I think about it, what's the alternative? Not coming or to come. And for me, there is no alternative. If I don't come, then I feel that there's something missing, to be honest with you. Now, it is difficult, as you say. It's easier over the last number of years, but we have to come by plane in general. I mean, there are other ways, but it could take so long. But it's difficult enough. But, where there's a will, there's a way. You'll find a way,
Beautiful. And what about for you, Gerard?
Yeah, and I think that there is always has been a great love for Lourdes in Ireland. As you said at the introduction, I am with the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, and the first organised English language pilgrimage to Lourdes took place in 1883, which in fact was only 25 years after the apparition. And we nowadays have the internet and everything else, and communication takes place in a moment. And it's hard to imagine what it would have taken for that message and the significance of Lourdes to make its way to Ireland just 25 years after it happened. And not alone that, for, in this instance, an oblate priest, Father William Ring, to actually go and understand the importance of organising a pilgrimage. And, Helen has mentioned flying here to Lourdes, but in those days they had to get on a ship and maybe get to England, take the train, get across the Channel. It's hard to imagine what that must have been like for those people, and then to get all the way down to the southwest of France. And they came in such numbers. I know, for example, in the case of the Oblates, in the 1930s, they chartered a ship which left Dublin to bring people to Lourdes, and they brought 1,300 people in the early 1930s. It's almost unbelievable. So there is a great love for Lourdes. I mean, even when I was growing up, I probably didn't know where Lourdes was, but I don't think you could have been a Catholic in Ireland without knowing of this place called Lourdes. And so, you know, when finally, when I came for the first time, I came with the intention that somebody kept asking, okay, I'll come, but that's my one and only time that I'll come. And that was 1978, and I'm still here. So I think Helen has mentioned the call. But I think there's a lot of that sense with people in Ireland of wanting to go to Lourdes. And people are aware of other shrines, but I think Lourdes holds a very special place in the hearts of Irish people. And indeed, as you walk around here, that golden dome was funded by Irish people. So it's, you know, we're not the largest group, we're not the biggest country in Europe, but even to this day, Lourdes is a special place for Irish people, and everybody has probably in their home a statue of Our Lady of Lourdes.
And you mentioned a bit about the difficulties and the challenges to organizing pilgrimages from Ireland to Lourdes and just coming to Lourdes. Could you speak a little bit, both of you, on what that process of organizing a pilgrimage to Lourdes looks like?
Well, you know, as we say, nowadays we fly. And look, I think it's fair to say that irrespective of what reason you have to travel, no one anymore likes to have to travel through an airport and go through all of the processes that take place. And whilst in fairness, airports nowadays, etc., and aircraft companies are well used to taking a small number of people on a scheduled service, maybe London to Paris or wherever, when you arrive at an airport with 50 or 60 or 70 people who have additional needs, they have various disabilities, that's a challenge for the airport. And I think there's a certain penance, and I often use that word carefully, a certain penance for people to be prepared to go through that. So it is difficult, and you know, it would be remiss of me not also to say that, as with everything else in this world, it is getting very expensive. And a lot of our people would be older people, perhaps on fixed incomes, pensions, and you know, it's not easy, and yet it does reflect, I think Helen would agree, that sense, and your experience, Helen, but that sense of they want to come, and they will make a lot of sacrifices to come.
And people start preparing in December, so they decide, they start coming, and then there are deanery meetings, and then there are fundraising, and you know, people are they're booking forms and how many people are coming, so it's already started. We have a Mass in our diocese on the 11th of February every year, and people come together, so it's sort of a reunion from the previous year, and people come and they start talking and deciding, and one thing leads to another, and one person encourages another. So yes, it's really, it's a diocesan, you know, it's a whole group of people coming together. You talk about procession, but the procession really starts back then. Pilgrimage starts back then, you know.
And what do the pilgrimage, the people going on pilgrimages look like? I mean, is it typically families, or is it, you know, people who are sick who are looking for healing? Is it the elderly? Is it a wide cross section of everyone?
It's, you know, I think that over the years, and maybe because of how the challenge of travel, it has become, I think, for a lot of the Irish pilgrimages, people who are more to do with difficulties of infirmity, of older age, as opposed to, you know, the more significant illnesses that can take place. But yes, I think you'll have a lot of families. Maybe if there's somebody who comes with us and would stay in the Acai Notre Dame, their family members will stay in the hotel. It certainly would be something that would have a familial element to it, for sure. And, you know, I think part of our challenge in the world we live in today is that when people think of coming to Lourdes, and we have a lot of that sense of the visible illness, you know, the person in the wheelchair, the person on the stretcher. But, you know, it's very hard to turn on the news today without hearing about mental health. And mental health is an invisible illness. And there's no doubt in my mind but that in this world that we live in with so many issues are of that,
if I may, cancer is the largest percentage of people that have filed an alleged cure case to me. We are talking of 33% of those that I've seen, and I've seen more than 1,000 in the last 15 years. And none of them became a miracle because they were treated, thanks God. What I'm saying is cancer is invisible because at the exception of those last few weeks, a cancer patient just looks like anyone else walking.
And talking about Lourdes and coming for miracles, recently I heard, I think it was in a film, but somebody a priest asked a lady why she was coming to Lourdes, and she said she was coming to Lourdes to pray for a miracle. And his response was, you come to Lourdes to pray, to carry on when there is no miracle. So it's for the strength to carry on when there isn't a miracle. So, I mean, I don't think the vast majority of people do come looking for physical healing, to be honest with you.
But there is so much suffering, all around us that is invisible, and I think, of course, on the 11th of February today is also the World Day of the Sick, and I just want to read something that the Holy Father, Pope Francis, he wrote. So he said, when speaking of children who are critically sick, that they are life's little heroes, and any time spent with the sick is holy time. St. John Paul II instituted the World Day of the Sick in 1992, and Gerard, you just mentioned earlier, Accueil Notre Dame, and as we come into the studio, we're welcomed by this 6-story building that has these, loving, welcoming arms saying, "Everyone come, everyone come." Doctor, could you speak for some of our audience that haven't had the pleasure and the luck of coming here to Lourdes? What is Accueil Notre Dame? What is it?
Well, since I would say after about 20 years of the apparitions, it was clear that the little hotels, pensions, auberges, they were starting to organize at a family level, were not capable of hosting sick people. And so a first accueil, which in French means welcoming, I'd say the closest word in English will be a hostel. A specialized hostel for sick people was built in what today is the Domain, and then it was followed by a second building, which is today the left side of the Accueil Notre Dame, the old Accueil, which is where now there is the Confessions, and then a third one right next to it, and then a fourth one doesn't exist anymore, Bernadette, and then the fifth one is now the big. So this attention to welcoming sick people has always been present in the spirit of the sanctuary. Of course, as it was said, conditions that have changed, and not necessarily people would like to sleep in a 6-bed bedroom or in a big hall with 20, 25, 30, as we have known in earlier years. But the spirit of welcoming is typical of Lourdes. I've just met 2 young deacons which are studying in Rome. They were lost. I mean, we just spent a few minutes together. And for what Hélène was saying, I would like to say that her experience is common to all of us. We all got in Lourdes for some funny, different, probably anonymous reason. And then something happens here. The countless number of students, college students, university students that come from your country, from the United States, have come to Lourdes, wrote and said, they asked if they could do an internship of a couple of weeks at the medical office, prospective medical students or psychology students or nurses, is incredible. And all of them come with a very naive spirit, and then something happens, and usually it happens at the processions. This is why the theme of this year is so relevant. Thou, because Bernadette was addressed by the apparition with a form of respect, thou, de vous in French, thou go tell the priests to come here in procession, build a chapel, come here in procession. So this is when it happens. It happens either in the evening, candle torch procession, when you are there among the crowd, and you realize you are not an individual, you are part of a large people, in quotes, people, quotes. I think that is the most striking experience that has moved so many to then start reflecting also on their lives and finding their vocation of life. How many priests have we met? How many couples have decided here their vocation to build a family? How many have decided to get into medicine as me, or to get into religious life or priesthood? It is about being part of that crowd in procession.
And that procession of everyone praying together, the rosary, I mean, you become a community of prayer that's so beautiful. And as you said, Doctor, a large part of the mission of Lourdes is welcoming the pilgrims, and particularly the sick pilgrims. And I know that that's a major, major aspect of what the Hospitalité de Notre Dame de Lourdes do. And Elena and Gerard, I know that you're both members. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Well, I think that without the assisted pilgrims, the sick, if you want to call them, that it's different. It's not the same. That you need they, as far as I am concerned, they are the centre, the reason why we are here, and without them it's a totally different experience. That they really are the reason, that they give us purpose, and that's why we come back, because we basically are there. If they're not able to walk, we're their eyes, their ears. We help them if they do, they need to be fed and they need to be looked after. So if we weren't here, they wouldn't be able to come either. And our main purpose, that is our purpose really, to be for them what they can't be for themselves. That's the way I look at it anyway.
That's so beautiful. And Gerard?
Yeah, and I think that sense of, obviously when people come, that word of welcome, and we are a welcoming hospitality. Obviously people and pilgrimages come, our own pilgrimages, and we have a team of hospitality volunteers with our pilgrimage, and they accompany, but our role as welcome is hugely important. So when they come off the aircraft, when they come off the train or the bus, and as Helen says, we are the hands, the feet, the eyes, etc., that has to mean something. And I think when we go through the years of formation leading up to the point where we become a member of the hospitality, a lot of that is to have us understand how important that is and how that's significant that role is. And I think as Helen's made the point about the role of the sick here in Lourdes, somebody once said to me that Lourdes without the sick would be like St. Vincent de Paul without the poor. And I think that is so true, that we had the terrible years of COVID, and even when they initially opened up again, obviously the most vulnerable were our sick, and they didn't come back immediately in any huge numbers. And there was a real sense that without these people here, it isn't complete. So we recognise in that insofar as we want to have the sick who are called to be here too, that equally then, if they are to be here, then we have to be here to welcome them and to be their eyes, their arms, their feet, etc.
That's so beautiful. And in the U.S., where I come from, I've read in multiple books that there are 30,000 replicas of the Lourdes Grotto around the United States. So people, who are not able to come, they want access to that. Doctor, if I may ask you a question, you're speaking about, of course, the procession and all of us praying together, being together, united as this body. And I keep feeling when I encounter the hospitality of Lourdes, the warmth, the welcoming nature, the fact that the priests and the religious brothers and sisters are here, and they're genuinely looking after my soul. It feels something like that. The presence of the Eucharist, the presence of the baths and all that prayer. And I wonder, Doctor, in your work as a medical doctor, what would happen if every hospital, looked at Lourdes and said, well, we need to, of course we want to heal the body, we want to heal, the ailment, but we want to look after that soul. Something you said earlier about the invisible nature of so many illnesses, and of course, as Gerard mentioned, in this modern age with overstimulation, with instant access to the news, many people are crying out for help, and they're not able to see it. And if they're not able, so I wonder, what would that look like? And is that something that you've thought about in your time here?
Well, I decided to try to get into medical school once I was in Lourdes, and I had met Lourdes, which answers my personal life, your question. In a more general theme, I would say, after also the beautiful experiences that Gerard and Helen have shared with us, if there is a common thing to all of us in Lourdes, a fil rouge, I would say, is that we learn in a way or another that the secret of Lourdes is to welcome others. And that's because Bernadette herself, the least in the village, the youngest of seers, the most ignorant, the most sick, the most poor family of the village, she felt welcome. Elle me regarde comme une personne regarde une autre personne. She looks at me as a person looks at another person. So independently if you are in good health or you're sick, if you're poor or you're rich, what really counts here is that you can look someone and make that someone feel welcome. Even, I was thinking of Helen, what she said, even as in my younger years experience, the blinds, because in Lourdes is where I really learned to touch, because we live in a world in which touching can be a criminal offense. So coming now to the hospitals, it depends, because we live in this crazy world in which caring for others, which started in the Christian world as an act of charity and love, has now become a mean of making money and getting rich. So would they look at us? I hope they do, because if they did, they would recognize that every human creature has a right to be cared for and cured. We live in a system in which, in many countries, being cared for in health is not necessarily a constitutional right. In Europe, we are lucky enough because it's the case. But for instance, in USA, it depends. If you have insurance, you don't have insurance. So yes, I would take your invitation as a motto. Let's make it that hospitals look at Lourdes and do all that they can to welcome and take care of every sick person.
And, Helena,
But come to Lourdes, you Americans. We are waiting for you. We'll show you the real thing.
Absolutely, we want to invite everyone to come to Lourdes in person, in pilgrimage. And in the last final 3 minutes that we have, Gerard and Helena, when you speak to people, when you invite them to come to Lourdes, what do you say to them? Someone who's never come, someone who may not even be sure about where they are in their faith journey?
I think that it's a very hard thing in one way to do, and it's been said, I think it was I forget the man's name, but the songwriter Bernadette the man who wrote the book, and he said that about Lourdes, that for those who have been, no words are necessary, and for those who have not, no words are possible. And I think when we talk about Lourdes, what I say to people is, come and see. I'm not saying to you that it is for you. I didn't come on that basis, but there's no doubt that call to come back, it is for me. It is my life. And it may not be for everybody I speak to, but what I will say to them is, come and see. Because there's nothing wrong with coming to see. And if nothing else, okay, at least you will know. And I don't think I could do more than that. After that, I have to hand it over to Our Lady. And if that person is to come, and I've been the physical voice to say it, that person will be here.
And I think people are pleasantly surprised when they come to Lourdes. They think they're going to be praying from morning until night. And it's not really the case, because you pray in different ways, and you don't have to be on your knees all of the time. So I think they're pleasantly surprised when they come to Lourdes, and they find it's a different experience. It's not what they had expected in the first place, So there's a mixture. There's a mixture of piety and prayerfulness and fun as well, So yes, do come.
And this year consecrated to processions. It is the Eucharistic procession in which you discover really the presence of Jesus Christ, which makes us think, for us Christians and Catholic Christians, that the center of our faith is believing that Jesus Christ is the Lord of our lives. He truly resurrected, and He truly is there to give us the gift of life and eternal life. And this happens because I've talked with countless numbers of people over these 15 years of tenure in Lourdes, and that's exactly the miracle. I think the miracle of Lourdes is Lourdes itself, as Gerard said.
No, and also that everyone, in a way, feels at home here. I mean, I've heard so many different languages. I mean, coming together, praying together, everyone, unified and looking towards the grotto also. It's overwhelming, and the physical landscape is also completely enchanting.
You speak about procession, and I remember my first experience of procession. And I was, the priest, he said he gave out the prayers at the torchlight procession, and people responded, everybody in their own languages. Now, I may not have understood what they were saying, but I knew what they were saying, because they were saying exactly the same thing as me. Even though it was in a different language, I didn't understand the words, but I knew I understood what was being said. So
that universal call to welcoming. And in these final seconds, I want to thank everyone, all of you, Gerard, Helena, and Doctor, for being here with us. And for all of you that are watching, please come to Lourdes. Join us. The sanctuary is ready to welcome all of you. And if you can't physically come, join us online in praying the rosary. Thank you so much, and God bless.